you will never change anything or solve a problem by just avoiding and not stepping up to have those conversations, but in a tactful, empathetic way.
Welcome to the Know Why podcast. I'm your host, Liberty McCarter. For many of us, it's not enough to know what people say about life's most important questions. We also want to know why. Each week, Know Why tackles tough questions on topics ranging from spirituality to current events. While we approach these issues from a Christian perspective, we discuss diverse opinions and ultimately dive into what the research says. Are you ready to know why? Let's get started. Welcome to the Know Why podcast. I'm your host, Liberty McCarter, and we have a special episode today because we are in the midst of a holiday season, and we want you to feel equipped to have some of those maybe awkward or uncomfortable, difficult conversations with friends and family, because as you know, we just experienced a presidential election and people have strong opinions about it. You may have friends and family and loved ones who have a range of different opinions. And so this shouldn't frighten us. We should feel equipped to be able to have difficult conversations and be able to listen to people whose beliefs might differ from ours. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And to discuss it with me is a returning guest and also a longtime dear friend of mine, Peyton Luke. Welcome back to the podcast, Peyton.
Thanks for having me, Liberty.
So since it's been a while since you were on, I will go ahead and just read your bio for everybody. Peyton is the media specialist at First Liberty Institute, where she acts as a communications liaison between the legal team and external media outlets. Peyton facilitates public relations efforts for the firm, as well as creates content that communicates to the public why religious liberty cases matter and how the situations can impact everyday people across America. She's also the producer and guest host of First Liberty Live. Peyton is a summa cum laude graduate of Texas A&M School of Law with her Master of Legal Studies, and she earned her Bachelor of Science in Convergence Journalism and Broadcast from Oral Roberts University. And she also served as ORU student body president and later interned with Fox News in New York City. And she also worked at ORU as administrative liaison in the president's office and later went on to be media director for a church right when the COVID pandemic hit. I remember when you were going through all that, and that was an unprecedented shift in media and culture as well. And you were experiencing all of that firsthand. So you've got lots of professional experience. I have lots of personal experience with Peyton in terms of just being a really good friend. And you heard a lot of liaison and communication in her professional bio, which is perfect because she's really good at doing that in real life too. So I asked you specifically to come and talk about this issue with me on the podcast because you've actually already been talking about it a little bit post-election. So what are just some of the things that you're seeing in headlines or with people that you know in terms of kind of how people are feeling and reacting after the election?
Sure. Well, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me back. And I'm excited to talk about communication because it is a passion of mine, communication and relationships. So yes, it's been very volatile since the elections on both sides. I have family members and friends on both sides. I've already had some tough conversations. I've been working with some individuals on, okay, I know this person thinks this way. How do I approach this conversation? Should I bring it up? Should I not bring it up? I don't know if we can be in the same room together without, being transparent about some of these things. So it's just about going about it with tact. But some of the things that have come up recently, Fox News put out an article just last week talking about how a Yale psychiatrist calls it essential for liberals to cut off Trump voting loved ones during the holidays. And this just breaks my heart how people are advising certain groups not to go to their family members, not to go to their friends, to spend the holiday season, which is some of the most beautiful times of the year for some, and some of the most awkward times of the year for others. So today I'm excited to talk about how to navigate those situations with tact.
Yeah, so I want to respond to that by saying, my natural response is, oh my goodness, life is so much more than politics. And that is my perspective. I believe that politics matters. Earlier this year, we had a whole series on political engagement and how it really does matter. Your vote matters, your involvement matters. And so we don't want to say that those issues don't matter. But I fundamentally believe, coming from a Christian perspective, that people matter more.
Amen.
So, that's where I'm coming from. But for a lot of people, that this is what's most important. And a lot of people believe that maybe their fundamental rights or safety is at stake. They believe that the other side isn't just, oh, well, you disagree with me politically, but like it's actually evil. Mm-hmm. What you're supporting is wrong. And then again, this can apply to both sides of people thinking this about their political opponents. And so if that's your viewpoint, then what do you do? It doesn't make sense to cut somebody off if you think they're holding an evil view on something.
Yes. And to some of the viewers, that might sound extreme, but I do want to validate what you just said, Liberty, because people are absolutely looking at it that way. If you scroll through social media for a short time, you'll see how intensely people are responding to others and calling them evil. Now, of course, on both sides, there's bad apples that spoil the whole barrel, mm-hmm. because not everyone is evil on the side that's opposite you. They probably have certain backgrounds and upbringings, nature and nurture that have made them become the way that they are. And so I'm sure if you had the opportunity to sit down with those individuals and really hear where they're coming from or how they came to these conclusions, you would see where they're coming from. But so many people nowadays sit behind their keyboard, sit behind their smartphone and type out all these nasty messages or these generalizations about the other side, which just always isn't true. I have friends on both sides, and we were even having the conversation about generalizations and how everyone on this side is this way and is after me, and you don't care about me, and you don't care about my safety, and going at it with the generalization and making these posts. And then the other friend on the side is like, but you know me and you know my heart, but you're making these posts and I'm in that other group. So do you truly think these things mm-hmm. about me, or you're just willing to post these things publicly? But actually, if you talk to the individual, they don't really think that way with some of their individual friends. So it's very interesting, kind of the divide that you see in approaching those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And if we're going to be giving practical advice, let's call that step one.
Yes.
Don't make generalizations. Because this is kind of just, I think, a symptom of the way our news is. And we were actually talking about this a few moments ago, but just the changing media landscape with social media. A lot of us have certain voices or influencers that we trust that echo what we believe, and those are the outlets that we look to. And oftentimes those are the ones too making generalizations about the other side. And I say this, critical of myself as well, because we talk of things like the Trump agenda, the liberal agenda, the progressive agenda, the, Christian nationalist agenda. And it's like this big movement and they all want this. And it's easy to talk like that. And so I do think you have to separate the individual from that, yes. though, like you were saying. And so that's such good advice to not look at somebody as a movement or an agenda, but actually, as a person. But I think a lot of the way that we just even learn about news and what's going on in culture makes that difficult.
Sure. And I think nowadays too, going into the holidays, it's important to remember just because someone in your family or a friend voted for the opposite person doesn't mean they agree with everything on that person's agenda. True. A lot of us have things that we didn't like about both candidates, and we had to go with the option that we believed would support the policies that we most strongly needed and felt like was going to benefit our family in the long run. So we had to choose between the two different ones, but don't generalize thinking, oh, you voted for the opposite side, so that means you are against this, this, and this. It's like, maybe not, but that creates the opportunity for open dialogue and discussion. So, and you were saying generalizations as well in the echo chamber. Algorithms are a big thing nowadays, especially if you're getting your news from digital mediums and on your smartphone or Instagram or TikTok or anything else. What you spend your time on, it's going to feed you more and more and more. So you might feel like, I'm not hearing anything from the other side, or anyone that's more moderate, or anyone speaking to the situation that I'm in that's on the other side. Well, maybe you need to go search and look for those things, because there are people that are out there and addressing the situations and those fears and concerns.
Yes, such a good point. So we have done a series on technology and social media. I encourage people to go and back and look at that. But another thing I'll highlight just really quick is the documentary called The Social Dilemma. It was put out by Netflix in 2020. I really recommend watching that because it demonstrates just how much social media can influence what we think and what we believe. And that's not to say that, someone's political views aren't valid or aren't their own, but we do have to be careful that we're not allowing those algorithms, which are created to push us toward more and more extreme content, that we're not letting those dictate our opinions about other people in our lives.
Absolutely. And I do want to say something to the avoidance earlier. And avoiders are deliberately they deliberately or ignore and withdraw from a conflict rather than face it. So avoiders do not seem to care about their issue or the issues of others. People who avoid the situation hope the problem will go away, resolve itself without their involvement, or rely on others to take the responsibility. Unfortunately, with everything that's going on in the election, avoiding the situation with your dad, with your sister, or some others probably isn't going to go away if you just avoid it. Or if you don't go to the holiday gathering, you might create more of a family rift down the road that's even harder to come back from. So I would just encourage people, the Yale psychiatrist who is saying that that's a little bit extreme. And you shouldn't ostracize people who have loved you for years based on one election or political point of view. That just breaks my heart. So I do have a few tips.
Yes,
for
I would
people.
love to hear that.
Yes, so I have a few tips. So if you're going into the holidays, you're having this family gathering, you know some of these conversations might come up.
Mm-hmm.
They might not. You might not need these tips, but it's good to have them in your back pocket so you can prepare. So, take time to prepare and center yourself before the conversation or before the event, knowing what you might want to say to stay on track and avoid creating more conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like creating your message points.
Yeah.
This is what I want to stick with. This is the area that I'm going to go with. I'm not going to go beyond that unless the conversation opens up or the person seems open to going further. Be open. Try to be open-minded and avoid assuming you know what the other person is thinking or feeling. Listen actively. So pay attention to what the other person is saying. Show interest and ask questions to understand. Avoid interrupting, judging, or dismissing their perspectives, because to them, those perspectives are valid. If they say they're feeling this way, that is how they were feeling. You might not feel that way. That's okay. But that is their reality. So to some degree, you have to get to the root of how they came to that. Or if they're asking you to do stuff and change stuff and versus coming out, well, I can't do that. You can be like, well, how do you want me to make that happen? How do you expect me to accomplish that? Because it helps them come up with a solution, because sometimes people will attack, they'll say things, but they actually don't have a solution. They're just angry. But sometimes people just need to feel acknowledged. When I was doing academics for my master's degree and we were doing arbitration and mediation, I had this situation where I was representing a client who was a CEO, And then we had the other party who was coming in. The other attorney came in. They were very aggressive. They were very, very intense. The other client was very upset. And I had told my client going into it, like, hey, we're going to stay calm and we're going to hear their side first. They came out very intense. And then we actually offered an apology because at the end of the day, that person wanted to hear that the CEO was sorry for what had taken place and just acknowledged it had happened. So they were asking for a certain set of money that my client couldn't afford, but just offering the acknowledgement and the apology, which cost nothing, changed everything. It changed the entire situation. So sometimes people just need to be heard. People need to be acknowledged. And you don't have to apologize for who you voted for. You shouldn't go that far because there was a reason you believe that too, and that other person should respect that as well. But at the end of the day, sometimes people just want to be heard and acknowledged. Use I statements. Focus on expressing your own feelings and thoughts instead of placing blame. Choose the right time. Probably the time at dinner with everyone around, or some of your young cousins, or, grandma, grandpa. Unless they're the person there's going to be contention with, it's probably not the best to do the big groups because it might just cause more of a stir and a disruption. It's probably better to have a small group or one-on-one if there's already been friction with a particular individual. So, go get your hot chocolate, go to the couch, go on the back porch, sit down and have a heart-to-heart conversation. Communicate effectively. Be clear and concise in your messaging. Use appropriate body language and be mindful of your tone of voice. Take a break. So if you need to, take a break, but set a time to come back. Don't be like, hey, I'm done. But there's still loose ends. You can be like, hey, I have to go inside. We're going to go play Monopoly, whatever, but still come back and finish up that conversation. And it's okay to agree to disagree. It's okay to not always agree with the other person. So just taking some of those tools, having empathy, seeing that they are valid and having that point of view, but you will never change anything or solve a problem by just avoiding and not stepping up to have those conversations, but in a tactful, empathetic way.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So many good points. And yeah, you can't even hope to change somebody's mind about an issue if you're not willing to talk with them about it. And you know what? Like you said, you may end up agreeing to disagree, but you may also end up with them having a little bit more of an understanding of where you're coming from. And maybe you'll learn something too about where they are coming from. And so that doesn't, don't despise the small progress toward better understanding or helping somebody to potentially see your side or better understand theirs, because that small movement toward each other again is important. And I'll just add, this is in reference to an interview that we did with Chris Butler. He's with an organization called the AND Campaign. We did it earlier this year as part of our Know About Political Engagement series. But he was talking about politics and keeping Christ at the center and not finding your identity in a political party and all of that. And one of the things that he recommended that I think could really apply to a personal conversation too is try to, maybe this is part of your preparation, try to list 10 things that you think the other side is doing well or that your side gets wrong. And if you can't come up with 10 things, especially about your own side, then that probably means you have some blind spots. But if you can maybe take time to acknowledge, acknowledge some of the areas that your side or your belief system or your team, so to speak, could make some changes, then that's going to go a long way with the other person. But I wanted to ask too, we've seen this people cutting each other off, canceling each other, or being, I've seen it on social media, even like, if you voted for so-and-so, go ahead and unfollow me right now. And, I want nothing to do with you. But like you said, there is a time and a place that used to be the standard advice of don't talk about politics and religion. We, like you said, we don't want to avoid all the time because these are good conversations we need to have. But do you think that there is a time and place to know that you disagree with someone and not bring it up? Obviously, we talk about like timing, at a family gathering, but even just in general, what are your thoughts on when should I make an issue of this and when should I just truly let it go? And like politics doesn't have to be part of our relationship. What do you think?
I know there's definitely a time where you let it go and you don't bring it up. Maybe you had that conversation in the past and it got really heated and wasn't productive and you know that person hasn't changed. Maybe you've seen some things that they did post on social media and it was drastically different and really intense and hateful. Depending on the demeanor of the person or the timing or the openness, maybe you can bring up. But for the most part, I do think there are times when it's not going to be productive. If it's not going to be beneficial, you can just not have those conversations in that time. If the person maybe starts to open it up, or maybe your spouse is with you, maybe someone else is there that you know is in your particular space and framework of thinking. If they are with you, just not as a witness, but in a way as a witness or support to back you up. If you know this person might get intense, you could have them there. Support is good as well. But there are times when it's like, I know this isn't going to be beneficial. I'm not going to convince that person. I'm going to pray for that person because the only one who's going to soften their heart is going to be the Lord. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to choose to love them as a person and as an individual. But on these particular topics, we are not going to agree. So I'm going to leave it there. And, at the end of the day, if someone is very, very heated, there may be unique special circumstances where you don't go to that gathering. But I think the blanket statement from the Yale psychiatrist just telling them entirely, if you voted for the other side, don't go to your family members, I think that is wrong and is not the best judgment and is going to bring division to families. But if you know, hey, I've tried with this person in the past, it gets really heated, or I do fear for my safety, then maybe you could sit out this year. But those are in small instances.
Right. That's a special circumstance for sure. And I did want to ask too, before we wrap up, you gave great advice on preparing yourself to stay calm, to watch your tone. And I'm the kind of person, my family, as you know, Peyton, you've known my family for a long time. We're loud people. So even when things aren't necessarily like bad,
You get excited.
it just gets loud. Yeah. You could be talking about a movie and it's a very loud conversation. But so we got to be careful to make sure that we're not coming across to somebody, especially if they have different kinds of expression in a way that's, intimidating. But somebody might be listening and they might say, look, I've tried to have a conversation with my parent or my grandparent or my friend or my sibling or whatever. I've tried to do this, but they attack me. I feel like they're the ones that get emotional. And how do you respond if you want to have a calm conversation and you feel like you are being calm and thoughtful, but the other person's emotions are starting to get out of control?
Well, one, if it's at a family gathering, you could also say something like, hey, I would love to discuss this with you, but I think we'll need to save that for another time. I don't think right now is the best time or space for this, but let's schedule a phone call, let's schedule coffee, let's do a FaceTime or Zoom, and I would love to discuss this because at the end of the day, if it's a phone call or Zoom and things get intense, you can hang up. Mm-hmm. You are physically safe and there is space. And again, going with another person. But some people are tough. And again, they need the love of Jesus. But there are ways to go about having those productive conversations. You could be like, hey, I want to have this conversation with you, but I don't think this is becoming productive. And so when you are ready to hear where my heart is and to have a conversation back and forth, then I'm happy to have that with you. But if you're going to attack me as a person, I'm going to ask that you respect me, and we're going to put this on the shelf for now because this is not becoming productive. But if you change your mind, give me a call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. We do, have self-respect and make sure that you others are respecting you too. You can set those boundaries. But if more of us just were willing to approach each other with this kind of attitude, I think that it would make a lot of people just happier and more content. And something we've talked about multiple times on the podcast is that the most important thing basically for happiness and flourishing and health and success in life, it all comes down to community. And there are so many people who don't have community, especially in our generation and younger generations. They are disconnected, and being connected to a group of like-minded people on your social media can be encouraging, but it is not a replacement for in-person community. And so obviously, like, everybody wants to find in-person community that is like-minded, but family, close friends, you're not always going to agree on everything. That's community. That's who you need in your life. Again, barring extreme circumstances, but don't sacrifice those relationships like you're saying. And I wanted to just point out too, our goal on this podcast is to help you know why you believe what you believe. But your beliefs will become stronger and your position will become stronger if you take the time to know why somebody else believes what they believe. So it really is just about giving grace and being curious and willing to step into some of those awkward moments sometimes. But
don't burn bridges prematurely because guess what? The political pendulum tends to swing, and in the future, you might be in the opposite circumstance. Maybe you win and their side loses or vice versa, and you're going to wish you still had those relationships. So don't burn your bridges prematurely.
Yeah, so true. And you just don't know how, politics is going to shake down. Even in this past election, there were so many people who switched parties and for who they normally voted for. It's not something to lose relationships over. And again, here on the No Way podcast, we have a Christian perspective, which tells us that everybody's imperfect. This life is temporary. It's not eternal. So it's important, but it's not ultimate. And we are all imperfect people with limited knowledge. And so we make the best decisions and we do the best we can with the information that we have, but we're going to land in different places. And we need to give each other grace for that.
Sure. And we have such hope, and our identity is in Christ. We're citizens of heaven, first and foremost. And since this is coming from a Christian perspective, I want to bring up something that happened to me just this past week. And I made a post about this exact topic, and someone reached out and commented, and a member of a different group. And she said, Peyton, that is all great when you are secure in your heavenly position. And you know what? That just broke my heart because I can't even be upset with that because that would be so dark. That would be so depressing if all your hope was just in politics, if all your hope was in the specific agendas. That would be so sad and that would be so dark. And in that moment, that was a cry for acknowledgement. That was a cry for, love, and such a lost soul that just needed that acknowledgement from someone else. And so I just encourage our listeners, put yourself in someone else's shoes because we have such hope. We know where we're going, but for some they don't. But don't treat them, don't belittle them, and don't treat them with animosity because guess what? They're not going to see Jesus through you. So guess what? If it means putting your political views on the backseat and not discussing them at the holidays, because that person is more likely to see Jesus through you and you're less likely to get fired up and you're more able to address the differences in your relationship as a whole, it's better for them to have the opportunity to feel loved and acceptance and give true hospitality than to seem like you're just right and you won.
Yeah. So good.
And my final verse that I will leave with people is Romans 12, because this is great for the holiday season. So love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. That goes for both sides. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. This is not you being two-faced. This is you having empathy and being human. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to this conversation today. Hopefully, it's given you something to think about and helped you understand the why behind your beliefs a little bit better. Don't forget, if you want to find any resources that we mentioned in this episode or contact us with questions and ideas, visit us at knowwhypodcast.com.